For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin in Colombia once again with the fallout after President Juan Manuel Santos decided to pause peace talks with the FARC guerrillas. The president's announcement came after the guerrillas detained a general in western Colombia. Now, on Monday, President Santos took to national television to offer more information about the suspension of the talks. He really offered little new information or indications about whether the talks would continue. The Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia say they are willing to find a solution to the capture of the Army general. FARC leaders called for the peace talks to resume.
This is an unusual event. It's the first time a general of the Republican Army is captured by the insurgency, and this causes an incident. We understand that, but this is just the start. We said in our statement read this morning that this peace delegation is willing to contribute to a swift and a sensible solution to this problem, and the talks should continue.
For the latest on this story, we turn to our correspondent in Colombia, Charles Parkinson.
Press conference today in Havana, the FARC peace delegation has admitted that the guerrillas' 34th Front, which operates in the western coastal region of Chocó, does have General Ruben Dario Alzate in their custody, having captured him this past Sunday. Now, the delegation said they might be able to help facilitate the negotiations for the general's release. However, they were bullish in saying that his capture is an act of war that must be expected as long as the government insists on continuing with the negotiations during hostilities. Now, over the past few months, the FARC have been calling for a bilateral ceasefire, which the government has consistently rejected, and the FARC have said under a ceasefire acts like this would not take place. Now, finishing the press conference, the FARC asked a burning question which the government has not adequately answered, which is, what was the general doing in a red zone of high guerrilla activity, dressed as a civilian with no security protection? Charles Parkinson in Bogota, Colombia.
Moving to our coverage of the case of 43 missing students in Mexico, protests are continuing across the nation as Mexicans join together to demand justice. Yesterday, protesters attacked the Oaxaca state office of Mexico's ruling Institutional Revolutionary Party as part of the ongoing protests. Several demonstrators threw Molotov cocktails and kicked in the gates of the pre-office building. They hope to call attention to the inaction of the local government. Meanwhile, hundreds of peaceful protesters marched through the city carrying pictures of the missing students. And for the latest on the situation in Mexico, we go to our correspondent there, Clayton Kahn.
It was earlier this month that Luis Raul Gonzalez was elected as the director of Mexico's National Commission on Human Rights, an institution that is tasked with being a counterweight to the authorities to defend human rights in the country. Today, he gave his first public address as the head of that organization. Now, Gonzalez has worked for at least 35 years in the government. Before he became the head of this organization, he was the lawyer of Mexico's National Autonomous University, arguably one of the most important universities in Latin America. He also previously worked for the Commission, the organization, and had positions in Mexico's Ministry of Interior and even the Attorney General's office. Now, he comes in amidst a period of human rights crises in Mexico regarding the case of Ayotzinapa and Tlatlaya, where 22 presumed criminal gang members were extrajudicially executed by the military this past summer. The new director will need to regain the trust by the population, as the commission over the past recent years has been deemed corrupt, ineffective, and has upholded the interest of political parties rather than the public. So we will see how this new director carries out his job. This is Clayton Kahn reporting for Telesur.
Thanks to Clayton. We move south now to Ecuador, where the country could soon see changes to its constitution. With an explanation of the possible changes, here's our correspondent Liz Sherfius.
Ruling party País Alliance submitted a project on June 26 to amend 17 articles of the 2008 Constitution, 16 of which are currently being debated in the National Assembly. The amendments seek to expand the rights of citizens, taking into account government development goals.
The 17 articles that have been presented today have been analysed and determined to be legal, constitutional and judicially upheld so that they may lead to amendments. This is because none of the 17 articles change the structure of the state. Therefore, we hope that the reform package will be just seen in that way.
The Constitutional Court determined that the amendments do not require a public referendum as they do not change the structure of the state. A special committee in the National Assembly is currently reviewing the reforms.
More than 2 months ago, the legislative body of País Alliance presented to the Constitutional Court a package of reforms that are improving the Constitution by expanding the rights of citizens. Among the reforms is the right for candidates to indefinitely stand for re-election. As it stands now, officials can only be re-elected once. It also widens the capacity of the armed forces to work for internal security and defines the right of communication as a public good, among other things.
It was announced in the beginning of November that another 10 to 12 amendments will be submitted for review by the Constitutional Court. If they are passed, it remains to be determined if President Correa would run for re-election in 2017. Liz Scherfius, Telesur, Ecuador.
Thanks to Liz. We take a look around the world now. 2 members of the Russian punk band Pussy Riot have visited WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange at the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Assange has lived there in the embassy for 2 years. Maria Alokina and Najira Tolokolnikova became international human rights symbols after being jailed in Russia for nearly 2 years. The pair was convicted in 2012 of hooliganism motivated by religious hatred after storming Moscow's biggest cathedral and calling on the Virgin Mary to rid Russia of Putin. After meeting Assange, the pair said they have something in common, quote, as characters.
I believe that everything about a state should be transparent to its citizens, including the issue of surveillance. Its legality and justification should be explained to citizens.
And in the Syrian border town of Kobani, plumes of smoke were visible as the U.S.-led coalition launched more airstrikes. Loud explosions could be heard. Kobani has been encircled by the Islamic State militants for nearly 2 months. Reports from the ground suggest that the military tide is turning against the Islamic State. And staying in the Middle East, after the attacks in a Jerusalem synagogue on Tuesday morning, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims that the killings, along with a spate of recent attacks, are part of what he called a battle over Jerusalem. He also accuses Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas of inciting violence in the city.
As a nation, we will settle the score with every terrorist and their dispatchers, and we have proved we will do so. But no one must take the law into their own hands, even when spirits are riled and blood is boiling. We aren't alone campaigning a war against terrorism that hasn't started today. It accompanies us throughout the Zionism. We always overcame it, and we will this time as well. There are some who want to uproot us from our state and capital. They will not succeed. We are in a battle over Jerusalem, our eternal capital.
Moving on, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said in Moscow that there are many actors benefiting from the Ukraine conflict and that they want the Minsk agreements to fail in order to impose their own agenda. Speaking at a joint press conference with his German counterpart Frank-Walter Steinmeier, Lavrov said that Russia would, quote, refuse this. He added that a ceasefire should be honored.
There are many who want something, and not only in Kyiv. Also governments abroad that are influencing Kyiv, who want the Minsk agreements to fail, so that the fate of Ukraine is decided without those who are fighting for the right to live in their own country in the southeast. Then they will be forced to subordinate to those decisions. I categorically refuse this. I think this is a pure provocation.
And now moving to Ferguson, Missouri in the United States. A commission will soon look into the wave of social unrest in the community following the murder of young black male Michael Brown. For what the commission will investigate, here's our correspondent Alexandra Hall.
Missouri Governor Jay Nixon has announced the 16 members of his Ferguson Commission. They're religious leaders, teachers, business owners, and community organizers here from the St. Louis area, and they're tasked with looking into the social and economic factors that led to a huge wave of social unrest in the days, weeks, and months following the police officer Darren Wilson's shooting and killing of a black unarmed teacher, Michael Brown, here in August. The announcement comes just one day after Governor Nixon announced a state of emergency and activated the National Guard should violent protests erupt again. Both of these announcements come just as the whole community is waiting for the grand jury to decide whether or not criminal charges will be held against Officer Wilson. Activists here who have been protesting for the last 3 months say that neither activating the National Guard nor the Ferguson Commission will solve the underlying problems in Ferguson. In St. Louis, I'm Alexandra Hall for Telesur.
And thanks to Alexandra. On a lighter note, we end tonight with news from ABBA. Remember them? Former band member Bjorn Ulvaeus has launched a global initiative called Press Play to Give. It gives fans around the world the opportunity to donate to charity just by listening to the ABBA song Chiquitita. The royalties from the song will go to United Nations Children's Fund programs supporting young girls and is endorsed by all of the other ABBA members.
Jag har ofta tänkt på att om det finns en enda sak.
I often thought here is one single thing. One thing that I could choose that I believe will give us a better and more peaceful world. Then it is to give these girls and young women education, opportunity to seize power over their lives and independence. So for me, Chiquitita has become a symbol for all those. They're all Chiquititas.
Så jag tycker för mig så har Chiquitita blivit...
Plenty more on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you right back here in the morning.